Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is our weekly recap. We're going to hit some of the highlights of the week in case you missed it. Obviously, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell. There's that and a lot of other stories. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. All right, first on the docket. Today we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, it has been more than 50 years since his assassination in 1968, and Dr. Martin Luther King is remembered as an activist, a prominent leader in the civil rights movement, a pioneering historical figure, and wordsmith. His impact is still felt today, and we continue to look to him for strength when we fight for racial equality, which seems unending some days. Throughout his years of public service, the Nobel Peace Prize winner wrote and delivered speeches, the most notably being his 1963 I Have a Dream address. That provided wisdom that still holds true today. Let's take a quick listen.
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Now, first on the docket, a determination on the competency regarding Letitia Stout. For those of you who do not know, Letitia Stout is the stepmother of 11-year-old Gannon Stout, who was found deceased last year, and Miss Letitia Stout has been charged with first-degree murder. Originally, the case was progressing when Miss Letitia Stout was arrested in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and she was being transported back. She apparently was able to get out of her handcuffs while they were in Wichita, Kansas, and they had to spend a night there because of her attempted escape. Well, since Miss Letitia Stout has been back, she has attempted to escape from the El Paso County Jail as well. One competency evaluation was done, and they promptly found that Miss Letitia Stout was competent. A second competency evaluation was done at the request of the defense, and guess what? The doctor doing the evaluation, Dr. Jackie Grimmett, found that Letitia Stout was in fact competent to proceed. Now, what does that really mean? Okay, one can have mental health issues but still be competent. Competence simply means that you know why you're there in the courtroom, who the players are in the courtroom, i.e. the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense counsel, what roles they play, what the possible penalties are, what the jury decides in this particular case. So if you know that, hopefully your general education level social studies classes taught you the role of a jury trial, guess what? You are competent to proceed. In this particular case, Letitia Stout is now requesting for a hearing regarding a conflict with her attorneys. Miss Letitia Stout has 2 public defenders assigned to her case. There's probably investigators assigned to this case as well. But anytime that you raise competency, you better be right. And in this particular case, the attorneys were incorrect. They initially raised competency, they found her competent. They had another evaluation done, found her competent. What does that do to the attorney-client relationship when one side of that relationship thinks that the other person's crazy or not competent, suffers from a mental defect or disease, and the other person saying, I'm competent, I'm ready to go? I said all along, if one wanted to determine if Letitia Stout was competent, they simply had to read her letters that she wrote to the court. She clearly understood the proceedings that were taking place. She appreciated the seriousness of the offense. She understood the roles of her attorneys as well as the judge. That in and of itself made me think that the competency quest that the defense was going on may have been a delay tactic. It turns out it delayed the proceedings, and it may have ruined the attorney-client relationship to the point where Letitia Stout is now asking for new counsel. Just because you don't like your attorney when they're court-appointed doesn't mean you get another one. It has to rise to the level where the client, here in this case, Miss Letitia Stout, basically can't get along or can't work with the attorneys in some way. Had lots of clients over the years, didn't particularly like me, didn't like the advice that I was giving them, but I was doing it in my best interest. And unless she wants to go out and hire her own attorney, she's going to get the attorney that the court appoints to her unless there's an actual conflict. And from what we've seen from the record thus far, nothing in there would warrant a conflict at this time. We'll continue to follow this case. The preliminary hearing has been set now for March 11th and 12th. This will also be a combined hearing for the proof evident presumption great, which is basically a fancy word for a bond hearing, which says that you will not get a bond if the court finds the proof is evident and the presumption great. Basically, the evidence is overwhelming and there's a very strong likelihood of conviction for the prosecution. That means Miss Letitia Stout will not be getting a bond after that hearing. Next on the docket, we told you the other day that investigators were searching the house and following up on some leads as it related to the disappearance of Jennifer Dulos. Also, there were backhoes brought in and they were digging in various spots in at least 4 locations, following up on leads and what appeared to be some sort of disturbed dirt around Photo Dulos's former residence. Now, I'm a little surprised that it's taken almost a year for them to go back and look at these areas now. Don't you think you would have done that a lot sooner? Well, needless to say, nothing has turned up of evidentiary value at this point, and I think that the trail is running very cold as it relates to this particular case. We'll wait and see. Next on the docket, take a look at this video. If you want to see the easiest way for an attorney to be held in contempt, this is an example of it.
Your Honor, it's my motion at this time to withdraw from this case.
No, ma'am, that motion's denied.
Why?
Because
he won't accept the plea, and he's going contrary. He won't accept the, ma'am, I've been to the jail 5 times. He's flooding the toilets. He's causing disturbances. He's fighting. He's been beat up. He's calling me 12 times a day.
You are disparaging your client to this court.
Okay, well, the bottom line is, my advice to him, ma'am, is to take the deal. If he's not going to do that, then I'm withdrawing from this case.
Ma'am,
I've already been to the jail 5 times, Your Honor, to talk to him.
To withdraw is denied.
I bet I don't appear again. Goodbye.
Okay, I would like to make a contempt motion for Miss O'Neill.
A Louisville attorney by the name of Shamika O'Neill appeared via phone during a Zoom conference for a docket call. These are pretty normal these days in the new Zoom world that we live in. The judge, Judge Julie Kalin, had expected that the defendant in this particular case, Curtis Burns, was going to plead guilty to misdemeanor charges, but Mr. Burns refused to accept the deal. O'Neill told the judge that her client suffered from mental illness and that she wished to withdraw from the case as the counsel for Mr. Burns. It was clear that Miss O'Neill was rather frustrated that Mr. Burns wouldn't take the deal. But guess what? Go try the case. That's what attorneys do. Well, Miss O'Neill then gets hot and heavy with the judge as the judge says, "You're not going to withdraw." Miss O'Neill then begins to disparage her client on the record, saying that he has mental illness, he's a disciplinary problem in the jail, things that you as an attorney cannot say about your client in court for the world to see. You are an advocate. You're supposed to zealously represent them and only reveal information as you have to. That was completely unnecessary, no doubt. And when Miss O'Neill asked that she be allowed to withdraw from the case, and the judge said no. That's right. She hung up. The judge then said, I make a motion for contempt. And as you can see from the other participants on the Zoom call, they were shocked by the attorney's conduct. I was shocked by the attorney's conduct. We've all had clients that have caused great frustration. But guess what? You go try the case. You document that they're proceeding against your advice, and you go to trial. You do what you have to do. You don't hang up on the judge. You don't walk out of the courtroom. Now, Miss O'Neill faces up to 90 days in jail and a $500 fine. Now, if one is held in contempt by the court issues a motion for show cause. Show cause as to why you shouldn't be held in contempt. Normally, I can tell you from personal experience, I received one show cause in my days as an attorney, and that was simply because I was going to start a trial and the jury hadn't been brought up yet. The person that was going to cover another case in the courtroom for me didn't show up, so I ran upstairs to do a quick guilty plea. I was literally at the podium when my client was entering his guilty plea, and I had a sheriff standing behind me saying, the judge wants you downstairs. Well, I assure you, the judge where I was appearing before the court for the guilty plea, I would much rather be held in contempt from the judge down below. So when I showed up down below, the judge said, I've issued an order for show cause, bring in the jury. Not a good way to get the morning started with your client, seeing you're being held in contempt potentially. Needless to say, I won the case that day. I then went back a few days later for my show cause hearing. I explained the situation to the judge. I apologized, meaning no disrespect, and the judge withdrew the contempt citation. Now here, Miss O'Neill would do well to have apologized to the court and basically say her emotions and frustration got the best of her. But no, Miss O'Neill appeared before that judge the same day and said to the court, quote, mark my words, if you take adverse actions against me, you better be sure about it because you made some mistakes here today. I will attempt to hold you civilly or however responsible that I can. And that's my word. End quote from Miss O'Neill. Now, obviously, Miss O'Neill can do whatever she wants. She doesn't work for me, that's for sure. But I think if she has a mentor, someone would tell her it would do her well to go and apologize. Let's get straight to the docket. All right, we have another hearing set in the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell matter. Now, as you may recall, there's a hearing set a little farther out regarding the motion to dismiss and change of venue. We talked about that yesterday, so if you missed it, you could watch that video as well. Well, now there's a hearing set, and it's only a couple of weeks away. It's now set for February 17th at 9:30 a.m., obviously of 2021, and it's regarding the motion to compel. Now, as you may recall, this was alluded to somewhat at the motions hearing regarding the motion to disqualify the special prosecutor, Mr. Wood. And the court at one point blank asked Mr. Means, have you filed a motion to compel? Basically saying that there may be other statements out there that haven't been turned over by the prosecutor. And in the motion for specific discovery, this was filed back on December 17th of 2020. And really what it's asking for is everything that should have been turned over already. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, through their counsel, ask for a list of all persons, witnesses, potential witnesses, persons of knowledge or the like that you, the special prosecuting attorney, Mr. Robert Wood, have spoken, conversed with regard to this case. And then they want all the information, and then they say, hey, here's a list of people that you should let us have all this information about. Well, first one, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell. Of course, they have to turn over any statements that may be in their possession as it relates to that. Alex Cox, Zulema Pastanedas, all Daybell children, Tammy Daybell, Adams Cox, and the children of Adam Cox, Colby Ryan, Kelsey Ryan, parents of Chad Daybell, parents of Tammy Daybell, parents of Lori Vallow Daybell, And the list goes on. There are some 27 requests that have been made. Let me tell you, there's a rule, and it's called Rule 16, and it relates to discovery. And under the criminal rules, discovery is self-executing, and the prosecutor has a duty to turn over any information, not only that's in their possession, but may come into their possession. So they have to constantly be supplementing any Rule 16 disclosures. Now, the prosecutor is not going to withhold any information regarding these witness statements. They more than likely have been recorded, or there's been a results of interview, which would have been a summary typed up by the detective. Clearly, what Mr. Means and Mr. Pryor are looking for is something as it related to the whole incident that they charged that Mr. Wood was doing something unethical. And we all know how that turned out. Those little introductory comments is not something that is discoverable. If one of the witnesses says something and it's exculpatory, then a report should be made. But otherwise, they don't have to turn it over. Could you imagine having to write a report of everything that you do every day? Oh yeah, I do that. It's called my daily posting. I keep track of what I do every 6 minutes of the day. But we're not going to have prosecutors, police officers do that. All right. Now, what's the ramifications if something like that happened? Well, I don't think it did. First of all, if you look at the discovery disclosure that was filed January 14th, basically, Mr. Wood, in his response, says, "We've turned everything over to you." And in fact, they go to one more extreme, so to speak, and instead of just saying, "We've turned it over to you," they list them all in Addendum A, which we don't have access to, but it's any reports of examination and tests, state witnesses, expert witnesses, police reports. They list them all. Basically, say, you have what we have, but guess what? I'll give it to you again, just so we're absolutely clear. Now, if Mr. Wood had not turned something over and something was stated at trial that should have been turned over, guess what? That witness's testimony could be stricken, a mistrial could be declared, or there could be some other sanction as it relates to the district attorney if he failed to do that. From what I can tell from Mr. Wood, he does not seem like the guy that's going to withhold evidence. He's going to be like my old boss, my first boss as a prosecutor. And he says, you know what? I'm going to give the defense everything they want, and we're still going to convict the defendant. Plain hide the ball is something that amateurs and low-level skilled prosecutors do. Experienced, quality prosecutors go with the mentality of, I'll give you anything you want. Here, Mr. Wood saying, not only have I given it to you, I'll give it to you again. So when they have this hearing next week, it'll be interesting to see what Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's argument is, what they think hasn't been turned over. Once again, I'm a little surprised by the methods being used here. Frankly, I think this is more of a situation where Mr. Means is more familiar with the civil world, where you have to turn everything over. Guess what? In the criminal world, you go out with your investigator and you go and you knock on doors and ask any of these people, will you please talk with us? And guess what? You don't have to turn it over to the prosecution. That's the beautiful thing about it. Go talk to them. If you think something's being withheld, why do you want them to go back out and re-interview these witnesses? And so they say it twice. So then you have a prior consistent statement that you can introduce if the defense tries to say that it was recently made up and fabricated to somehow be prejudicial to the defense. Bottom line, I don't get it. Go out, do your investigation. Never, ever rely on the prosecution. And you have to live by a simple assumption if you're a defense counsel, which is assume nothing. I don't care what they say on the paper. You go talk with them. That's what you do. We'll obviously have that hearing. Hopefully you'll join us and we can watch it together. Thank you so much for watching this week. We appreciate you taking the time to do so. And we will see you next time on Crime Talk. Have a wonderful day.